Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down and back into the Seaman Cave for a little Throwback Thursday action. It's been a while since we did a Throwback Thursday review, but considering Netflix dropped season 2 of this television show on Friday, and I was going to rewatch season 1 anyway, and then I looked on my YouTube and I'm ashamed of myself for never reviewing this last year. It was one of my favorite shows of 2019. But all of those things combined gave me the opportunity to go, you know what? Let's do a little Throwback Thursday, knock out season 1, and then we will talk about season 2, which might be, for my money thus far, the best season of television in 2020. What are we talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, man, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in, spoiler free, into season 1 of The Umbrella Academy. Like I said, I'm ashamed that I didn't review this. This is one of my favorite shows of 2019, and just absolute brilliance. Now, obviously, this show checks off a lot of things that I already like. It's based on a comic book, and then it's been brought to life on TV. I guess just two things. You know, superheroes and comic books and those adaptations in media are my favorite things. So you already had me in the bag for this, a comic book that I haven't even read. I actually looked for the Umbrella Academy right after it came out. Apparently, everybody did that, and it was really hard to find them, and then I just hadn't had a chance to go back and read them yet. But that aside, the show is just spectacular, and the thing that I love about it is that it takes on the idea of superheroes in a way that we haven't seen. And we live in a world now where, you know, we have tons of superhero movies, tons of movies based on comic books, tons of shows with superheroes and based on comic books, and they've all kind of got a formula, you know what I mean? Like, we know what to expect when we watch these things. And yes, these different movies and shows can surprise us and still give us things that we didn't think we were gonna see or would have thought to have gotten. But we know how those things kind of operate, you know? You got any kind of superhero story, you got your hero, and if it's the first of that hero, more than likely you've got a little bit of an origin story. They got to overcome some troubles, some struggles, learn to become a hero, and then fight a big bad at the end. What's cool is 2019 gave us 2 comic book shows that don't really follow that to a T, you know, per se. We got The Boys last year, which I also think I screwed the pooch and didn't review the way I did with Umbrella Academy. And also, again, one of my other favorite shows of 2019. So maybe we'll do that before season 2 drops in September. Put that in the old memory banks. But you know, you get The Boys, which takes on the idea of superheroes as if they were celebrities, and how things about superheroes could rub regular people the wrong way. And you have a group of, you know, people who are trying to take down the superheroes, and you find out not all the superheroes are good or bad or a combination of both. And just the look at superheroes in general in that show was very different. The look here is just a completely different kind of thing to take a look at, in the sense that we're not chasing down a big bad, you know, like The Boys, the big bad or bads are this, you know, corporation of superheroes. Here, the big bad is just the apocalypse. Like, we have to stop the apocalypse. We don't know what's going to trigger the apocalypse. We don't know when it's going to happen, although eventually we do know exactly when it's going to happen. And then it's just trying to figure out how that all goes down. And what's interesting is the concept, which was created by Gerard Way in the comics, is that you have this man, Reginald Hargreaves, if you're unfamiliar with the Umbrella Academy, who on a day, I think there was like 60-something women had pregnancy births at the exact same time, at the exact same moment of the exact same day. And all of those women weren't pregnant prior. Hargreaves ends up buying 7 of them. You could say they're his adopted children, but he purchased these kids off of their mothers. And basically, his whole idea is to get these kids with these special abilities to raise them to stop the apocalypse. Now, why Hargreaves knows that these kids, just randomly born out of nowhere, have superpowers, or when the apocalypse is coming, or why, all questions that are posed in the show that we get little tidbits and hints to the answers to, but not completely. Like, we even after season 2, which we'll talk about after, we don't know everything about Hargreaves, and we don't know why he knows certain things or why he does some of the things he does. He's a very, very interesting man, and he is, of course, played by Colm Fiore, who absolutely crushes it. Like, for a guy who can wear so many different masks, in the sense that, like, he, every once in a while in the show, they'll give you moments where you see bits of his personality, but to the kids, he is always this strict, almost like army instructor, drilling them and teaching them to become heroes. Now, he adopts 7. For the show, what we know is one of them is just a regular person, not a hero. So her name is Vanya, and she does not participate in the trainings and the exercises that the other kids are doing because she's a regular. There is another character named Ben, who is played by Justin H. Min. I won't get too much into his character and what it does if you haven't seen the show, but it's really freaking cool. But he ends up dying in a mission. And all of this now has happened prior to the show, like picking up where it starts. And then the third member that is AKA, I guess, like missing to a degree, is 5. 5 just randomly goes missing. He has the ability to time travel, but also kind of like Nightcrawler. He can go from one spot to another, which is awesome. Basically, the show starts with him coming back, falling out of the sky as a kid in front of the entire Umbrella Academy. And he basically tells them that the apocalypse is going to happen in a couple days. He knows this because he can time travel. He worked for this group. My brain's a little fried because I've been so busy, but I think they're called the Commission. They basically are the keepers of the time stream. If there is some sort of an anomaly that pops up that tries to change something in the time stream, they go back in time to stop it. And they figure all these things out and just make sure that the timeline plays out the way that it's supposed to play out. And basically, when 5 goes missing, he jumps to like the day of the apocalypse, but after it happens. So he's the only person on Earth, and he wanders the Earth for years alone. And then the head of the Commission, the handler, I believe is what they refer to her as, she shows up and offers him a job. So he then becomes a time-traveling man and lives 45 years until he gets the ability to figure out the equation to get back home. Only problem is, which is great for us, when he does travel back home, he becomes a little kid again. So you have 13-year-old 5, who's now 45 years older than the rest of the group, who all are older than him. And that plays in so many different ways. So that's just your baseline story for this thing. And it's a really interesting concept as you watch the team try to help 5 figure out how to stop the apocalypse and what the trigger is going to be. And, they give 5 clues and things to kind of build on, and that's the basis of the story, which is really, really just tremendous. Like, the material and what you really want to get into are the characters. The character development, character storylines, and the acting is just so superb. But you only get there with tremendous writing. Every single episode of this show is interesting. It has that binge ability where you just need to hit play after every episode to finish it. And like I said, the story and the scripts, they tackle all that stuff in just really interesting ways that we've never seen. Then you look at the production value, and it looks like a movie. I mean, there is a talking chimp in this show, and you could have him look like a television CGI chimp. We got enough money where we can make the chimp look halfway decent and we'll only use him a couple times. Nah, man, Netflix spent all the money on this bad boy, man. He looks as good as any of the Planet of the Apes movies. He is in the show a bunch. And any of the visual effects that they use in the show look like movie caliber special effects. And some of the special effects are really freaking cool. I mean, besides Pogo, like some of the powers and the things that we get to see throughout the course of the show are just fascinating, man. And like I said, while you have this overall arching story of the apocalypse, and that in and of itself is interesting, it's the characters that make the show so amazing. You have Ellen Page, who plays Vanya, who is our normie. Or so we think. We learn things about Vanya. Her story is quite interesting throughout the course of the season. Ellen Page plays Vanya and does a great job. Does get a little annoying sometimes. In the second watch through, I was like, man, she really whines a lot. But Vanya got the short end of the stick, man, being a normie her entire life, and then finding out things that were kept from her. It really creates an interesting story for her, and where you end up with her character, you just go, I can't wait to see what they do next, because she might be the most powerful of all of them. And the whole reason why she doesn't know that she has powers, or how that's kept from her, is all just slowly released throughout the course of the show, and is really, really interesting. So when you're following Vanya, you have a really kind of interesting story going on, with the character that kind of pulls her away from her family and kind of leads us to where we're going. And that, of course, is Leonard Peabody, who's played by John Magaro, who just nails, like, the minute you see him, you're like, there's something off about him. And that whole story is really the linchpin to the entire season. And I thought they just executed that perfectly. And Vanya, when you start to see that she has powers, her power set, you don't really exactly know what it is or how, like, it works per se, but the ceiling for that is just crazy good. And the way they just set that up and deliver all of that material, brilliant. Then as far as the other characters in the show, you have Tom Hopper, who plays Luther Hargreaves. He's number one. Number one, he's supposed to be the leader of the group, and a lot of the complex issues around his character kind of go into that, and the aspect of the fact that his father sent him to space. When we first meet Luther, he's in space, and he comes home. They all come back home. They all end up growing up and living their own lives, except Luther. Luther stays at home and keeps doing, superhero work. And then he gets sent to the moon, and Reginald dies. Spoilers. But the death of Reginald Hargreaves brings everybody back. That's how everyone comes back to the house. That's where we kind of start from, is that death, and that's how everyone kind of comes back into each other's lives. And you start to find things out about the family, why they kind of separated, how certain people fell out of touch with other people. But Luther, after spending all this time on the moon, coming home, his character is interesting in the sense that he's gripping with the idea that he's supposed to be the leader of this group. That's how he was trained, but he's been out of touch for so long, and something happened to him. After everybody left, something happened to him that kind of mutated his body. So there's just like all these interesting things with Luther. My problem with Luther is, again, he's just like down in the dumps a lot in the show. And like he gets moments. He has a very, very close relationship with Allison, who's played by Emmy Raver Lampman. And they have some spectacular, they have a dance sequence that's just tremendous. And they get some really, really nice moments. And Luther gets a couple of those that give you some of the emotional beats throughout the show. But overall, he's just like you see Luther and what he can do. He's kind of the strength of the group. You're like, you could have done something more interesting with his character, and give us some time. I'll say that. If you're watching season 1, don't worry. Luther, season 2, all of the characters are elevated in season 2. But Luther in particular was so much fun in season 2. So that, especially in rewatching and watching all in a row, kind of a downer is when things are going on with Luther, his character can be better, than what we got in season 1, which is exciting because I still really enjoyed his character, and again, thought he was complex. The things that he's dealing with, his mutation, his strength, trying to be the leader, all really interesting things to kind of tackle and go into. Then, like I said, you have Emmy Raver Lampman playing Allison, and she has the ability to make people do what she says. She just goes, I heard a rumor, and then she says whatever, and then you do whatever that rumor is. And again, it's an interesting thing that they play with her story. It mostly focuses in and around her relationship with her daughter and her ex-husband, and how they divorced, what goes into it, and how for her, more often than not, using that power she learned as she grew up into adulthood causes her more problems than not. So her character doesn't even use her superpower. She's restricted herself from that to try to be more of a person, and less of a superpowered person. And that's just really interesting in and of itself. Again, from a complex character look, you're like, man, that's a lot going on. And Emmy Raver Lampman does a wonderful job with that material. And just the relationship specifically with her and Luther and her and Vanya. Those relationships are the most interesting for her storyline, the most interesting in the show, I think, in the perspective of where Allison is coming from and how she interacts with those people. And how she has realized specifically after her dad dying and now seeing everybody come back home, how there are certain relationships that need to be mended and wrongs that should be righted for certain people like Vanya. And all that stuff, again, executed wonderfully, and I loved what Emmy Raver Lampman did with the character. Like, just really, really enjoyable. And again, where her arc leads by the time you get to the end of the season, you're just like, well, where do you go from there? Like, that's a really interesting, complex thing to kind of flesh out. That does get fleshed out and played out in season 2. Then if you move on from there, we also have number 4. Klaus Hargreaves, I believe, is number 4. 1 is Luther. 2, I believe, is Allison. 3 might be Diego? I think Klaus is 4. I don't know. They all have numbers because Reginald never refers to them by name. But Klaus, who is played by Robert Sheehan, my favorite character in the entire show because of just what he is. I mean, he is an openly gay drug addict with the superpower to commune with the dead. So there's a lot of effed up stuff going on internally for Klaus at all times, and the way he externally brings that out, one is just a character that seems like a ton of fun to play, because he can do wacky and zany things, and his look on everything is, I want to be the center of attention. That's his thing as a kid. He's always the loudest or doing things to make people look at him, and that continues through adulthood. But when you take into just like what Sheehan does with the character, he's the most interesting and complex. Followed very, very closely by number 5, who we'll get to, who was also my number 2. He's my second favorite character. But just the way Sheehan delivers it and what they give him, he kind of goes through, getting clean in season 1, and there's an element of time travel for his character as well that ties in to his story that just adds so much complexity and just makes him look at where he was at the beginning of the show to where he is at the middle to where he is by the end of the show. And the ups and downs with Klaus are just a ton of fun to just watch Sheehan perform, because he is electric, man. Like, when he is on screen, he steals every scene he is in. And what's cool is at all times, he is being followed by, I believe, number 6, maybe, who is Ben, played by Justin H. Min. Ben, as we mentioned, is dead. Klaus can commune with the dead. So he has a direct line to Ben pretty much at all times. Ben's always there. And they don't give Justin H. Min a ton to do in season 1. He's really kind of held back a bit, and he pops up here and there, does things. He has a massive moment in the finale. And the relationship between the two and how that plays into Klaus and Ben's power sets is really interesting, and you get to that. But season 2 is really where Ben shines. The Ben Klaus stuff in season 2, which we'll again talk about in another video, is really just, it gives Ben so much more to do. So here in season 1, he's good. You're kind of interested in some of his story and where he pops up. He has moments, but they don't really dive into his character too much. We get to see that come season 2. Which leaves us just 2 members of the family left. Diego, who's played by David Castaneda. He has the ability to manipulate objects that are, moving in space and air. So his big thing is knives. He can throw knives and they can bend and move around. Kind of crazy the way he can throw the knives. And we do get to find a little bit more. Again, like I said, everybody kind of gets upped in season 2, which we'll talk about. But you learn even more about his powers in season 2, which is cool. But what he's able to do with knives, he commonly is referred to throughout, I think in season 1 and season 2, Batman references are made to Diego. He is kind of that street level vigilante who, doesn't have a cape and cowl, but he's got the domino mask that they all wore as kids. He's still the only one that wears it. And he's trying to be a vigilante. He clearly had a relationship with one of the female detectives at the police department, so he has an in to figure things out, and he does the vigilante thing. And Diego, again, also really, really interesting and complex, where he's coming from, just how being raised affected him and his relationship specifically with Reginald and their mother, Grace, who's played by Jordan Claire Robbins, who is actually an AI. She's a robot that Hargreaves created to help raise the kids and be kind of like their mom. But the Diego's relationship specifically to Grace, and how that plays into the relationship with his dad and personal things that he dealt with. He has a bit of a stutter problem. So the way they kind of resolve that in flashbacks when he's a kid, in scenes with Grace, to how he doesn't have the stutter as a kid unless he is scared or intimidated or in a situation where he feels more like a child. And then that stutter kind of starts to come back up, and the performance crushes. Like, I love all these characters so much, but Diego, again, just a very complex character that, again, we scratch the surface on Diego. And what we find in that scratching is very, very interesting. But again, someone else comes season 2 who will get flushed out a lot more. Which leaves us our 7th and final family member, who is, of course, number 5, who, for me, after Klaus, is my favorite character, but might be the best thing about season 1 and the most interesting character. It's real close between him and Klaus. There's so many interesting things with everybody, but those two stand out the most. And in season 1, Aiden Gallagher, who plays number 5, absolutely crushes it. Holy cow, man. Like, the interesting thing about 5, like we said, he jumps to the future at 13, lives an entire life, and then comes back and ends up in his 13-year-old body. So you have a 58-year-old man who lived for 45 years in the future and time traveling, working for the commission, who now is trapped inside a 13-year-old's body. And Aiden Gallagher, it's mind-blowing the way he makes you believe that a 58-year-old man is trapped inside of him. That sounds messed up, which I didn't want it to sound. But yeah, I mean, like, he makes you buy that he's a 58-year-old man who looks like a 13-year-old boy. And it's interesting because there are plenty of times, because of his appearance, people think he's, someone's son, or he's their kid, or their little brother. And it's like, I'm older than everybody here. I know more. We see him drinking throughout the show occasionally, and you're like, oh yeah, he's 58. And he acts like he doesn't act like he's a 13-year-old. He hates that he's in this little tiny body. But his power set is easily the most visually interesting to watch and be utilized. He's the character, I think, from a power perspective, is the most fleshed out of everybody in season 1. And he has 2 action sequences. One where he's fighting 2 other commission members who are now trying to track him down because he's trying to stop the apocalypse, which would mess up the timeline. Cha-Cha and Hazel, played by Mary J. Blige and Cameron Britton, respectively, kind of are chasing him through a department store. Unbelievable sequence. And the other scene is in a donut shop where, like, 15 armed people try to come and stop him, and the way he kills all these dudes, the way they use that, he can be here, now he's over here, unbelievable choreography, unbelievably fun action, and the whole show uses a phenomenal soundtrack, but specifically when 5 is doing things, anytime the soundtrack kicks in for 5, it is stupendous, man. It's the best thing you could do, and it just fits so well. The whole show is just fun. Like, everything that they're trying to do with the show is just fun, and the music really drives a lot of it, but specifically for number 5's actions. So you have a complex group of 7 characters that they do a really good job of fleshing out. Season 1, especially after seeing season 2, is really establishing a lot. You're creating an entire world. You're creating 7 characters that need to be pretty much fleshed out in some form or another so that you believe that they've been trained to the point where they have control of their powers and mastery to a degree of their powers. But how their powers in specifically affect each character, and how being raised by Reginald affects each character differently. It creates 7 really, really complex, interesting characters that you just want to keep diving into, and it's one of the things that I think should set this up for a show to have a lot of longevity. Is these characters are really interesting, and you can get deeper into them each season. Season 2, like I said, it elevates all of them and gets into different aspects that you maybe didn't touch on at all or just grazed in season 1. And all of that together is just dynamite, man. And then, all the supporting characters that you have, I mentioned, obviously, Mary J. Blige and Cameron Britton, who play Cha-Cha and Hazel. Their relationship on screen is fantastic. I love watching their bickering and their back and forth. You can tell these are 2 people who have been protecting the timeline for a super long time, and they've been partners for a super long time, and how they view each other, how they view the job, how the commission works. All that stuff with them is really, really interesting. And it also involves Kate Walsh, who plays the handler. So where she pops up and plays in with them and also with 5's storyline. Love all that stuff, and she's perfect at being the person who looks sweet because she's extremely attractive, and like just can play that smile that, like, oh yeah, everything's fine, but she is a manipulative bitch. And 5 would be the first one to tell you that. The way she can manipulate people and the way she runs things at the commission and handles all of these different people, she just crushes being that good guy with a smile. Where it's like, deep down, man, like there might be some evil in there that might need to be addressed. The power that she wants and that she has. And again, way more interesting in season 2. So, you know, the stuff with the commission I thought was really, really interesting. You know, we also mentioned Grace Jordan Claire Robbins and Pogo, who I didn't mention but was voiced and played by Adam Godley. You know, they're like the two people or person and monkey that basically raised the kids, because Hargreaves, like I said, is a drill instructor, and Colm Fiore is perfect at that stuff. And the balance between the three of them and how that plays into the characters and how the kids were raised, and they all have different things that kind of play into things that happen with you know, the individual, you know, kids. And again, just really interesting in the like the concept of family and the way family is discussed specifically in season 1. So interesting and so complex because of how this family was built in the first place. But it really allows you to dive in and do some interesting things with supporting characters. You know, we don't dive into their past a whole lot, but things that they give us and things that they kind of reveal in the course of trying to help, you know, the Umbrella Academy maybe stop the apocalypse. It is just interesting, and it plays into everything so well. So, like, you have this massive cast. Everybody is bringing something to it. Everybody is adding. Everybody is elevating the material and elevating each other's performances to the point where, like, this thing is just, if you're a comic book superhero fan, this thing is perfect, dude. Like, season 1 was just amazing. And then to watch season 2 blow it out of the water, it's even more amazing. We will talk about that next video. But for season 1, man, like I said, from production to writing to acting to just, you know, the story to delivery, this thing is an absolute knockout. And by the time we get to the end of season 1, what they set up and where they can go, even after you get to this end of season 1, you feel like the ceiling is so high, and what you can dive into and figure out and discover about these characters can be so interesting. I wonder what's gonna happen. And the way it ends, you're like, well, what's gonna happen? Because the thing that happens, you're unsure of because of things that we've learned throughout the season, and it sets up perfectly for what they end up doing in season 2. And it's just great. I love the Umbrella Academy so much. Season 1, just as good second time through. Maybe some of the whiny aspects of some of the characters got a little bit more annoying, but for the most part, man, like, the level of annoying is like 0.001, you know, and the rest of it is just pure perfection. So for the Seaman, I don't know what else you could ask for from Umbrella Academy season 1. Simply because it had to set everything up. Like, one of the main reasons season 2 thrives as much as it does, and I think is an improvement from season 1, is it doesn't have to spend time setting everything up. We now know all these characters. We don't know everything about them, but we know enough to know who they are, how they operate, and if you do what you do in season 2, it allows you to explore more into the depths of these characters, but also give you the ability to do things that are just... You know what I mean? So I definitely am all in on the Umbrella Academy anytime it drops. So those are all the Seaman's crazy long, semi-spoiler-ish, non-spoiler thoughts. I think it was important to set up what the show does and some of the aspects of the show, but I don't want to give anything away about their journey to try to stop the apocalypse. So hopefully I kept most things a secret. And if you haven't seen it, one... piqued your interest to want to check it out, and 2, you'll be just as surprised as anybody that did watch season 1. But as I say, I'm done with me. That means it's time for you. If you haven't seen it, are you going to check it out? Are you interested in it? Are you not interested? What do you think a show like this, if you've watched this whole video, what do you think a show like this could do or falls for you personally? And then obviously, if you have watched it, I mean, how freaking great is season 1? Did you rewatch it before season 2 came out? Are you planning to rewatch it if you haven't had a chance to do any of those things? What was, your favorite elements of season 1? Who was your favorite character or characters? And what were you most excited about coming from season 1 going into season 2? What are you looking forward to? Anything you're thinking about Umbrella Academy down below in the comments. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come show a little love to the old Seaman and be around more often as we talk movies, TV, trailers, all of the fun, nerdy things that we talk about over here, jump over there, man. Hit the subscribe button. Hit that little bell for those alerts. And until next time, for the Seaman Cinema Sit Down, I'm the Seaman. I'm signing off. Peace! Well, I'll be. You guys are still here. You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. Seaman's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the Seaman goodies, join the Cinema Sit-Down squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.